Welcome. I want to start out by saying the information that I have is information that I've got from speaking with people and reading about this. So if there are errors or whatever, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm just going to read what I've written down to start with. Shirley Downey, who is a lady who lived in BC, passed away a couple of years ago, but this information is information on research that she did about the Kaladar Hotel when it was up on the hill to the south of number 7. Her husband sent this information from the research that she had done. She was a granddaughter of the people who originally owned the first hotel. There's information that I have. And her grandparents were John Caleb Lewis, who was born in 1884, and his wife, Harriet Ellen Woodcock, who was born in 1863. And they apparently built the first hotel that was up on the near 41 South. Number 7 wasn't there at that time, and operated it, and then it burned, and it was rebuilt on or close to the original location. It was located a short distance south of number 7 and was rebuilt. I don't know how long after it burned that it was rebuilt, but I assume probably fairly soon. Now, we have some information here that came from Marita Parks, who is a welcome guest here this afternoon. And she, as I got this straight, worked there as a teenager, is that correct? At the original hotel? So this was an interview that was done with Marita. It says the original section of the hotel building was part of a grocery store located on the top of the hill in the west side of 41 Highway, just south of the CPR tracks. Marita started working there at the age of 15 as a kitchen and cleaning helper for the owner, Robert White. Marita will celebrate her 100th birthday. So this would have been around 1933. Prior to that, she had worked for Nelson Tryon family, who ran a boarding house across the road. And if any of you know where Hilda Salmon lived, it's on the opposite corner where you turn down to go toward the station. The Tryon house was there, and it was right across the road from the old hotel. The store and hotel operated as a business, as one business. So customers could serve the public, and then they could go into the hotel and work in the hotel. So it was pretty handy to go from one part of the building to the other. And Mr. and Mrs. Walt Villeneuve, some may be familiar with that name, also owned the business while it was on the top of the hill. But Marita could not recall if he was the one who moved the building. But I think we have a story that Mr. Flake, who was Eileen Newman's grandfather, was the gentleman who moved the hotel down the hill in 1934 using horses and rollers. Quite a feat back in those days. The hotel portion of the building was detached from the store to be moved to the bottom of the hill to the corner of Highway 7 and 41. It was a slow process, ultimately taking 4 days. Can you imagine 4 days walking the intersection of 7 and 41 today? Using large logs placed under the structure and 2 teams of horses pulled, and then when the logs came out at the back, they picked them up and they moved them to the front and went through the same process again. The railway tracks were a worry in case the train came along. Appreciate that one. Once past the tracks, the hill became very steep, and the strength of the horses had to be used to hold the structure back, going down the steep grade. And as they slowly made it over toward their destination, many thanks to Marita and her daughter Fern Sador for adding this piece of history for our area. Fern worked at the hotel in its new location during her high school years. So that was the interview that you did? Yes. With Marita.
Oh, Marita Fern.
Yeah, okay. Maybe John would like to read a little story about the Kaladar Hotel. If you go across the road, what is now the Shell station, there was a Mr. and Mrs. Dunbar, and John has a little story that is rather humorous about Mr. Dunbar.
Anyway, this is local folklore. Don Little and Art Dunbar owned the Shell station across the road from the hotel. In those days, garages were the hub for the locals to hang out and occasionally cook up a little bit of nonsense. Well, anyway, Art owned this Second World War Jeep, and one day he told the gang that he could drive the Jeep up the front steps of the Kaladar Hotel onto the landing, turn it around, and come back down and not break a thing. So anyway, there was a bit of money involved. Everybody wanted in on this one. So anyway, all bets were down, and Art took off. Up the steps he went with the Jeep, and he got on the landing, and things were pretty tight up there. But anyway, he maneuvered around, and finally he came down. He never broke a board or anything. Collected his bets from the gang, and one could only imagine the guests in the dining room what they were thinking about the local flight. But anyway, it was a good story. We don't know how much it was embellished over the years, but this is what was told to me. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure how we came about this information from BC. My brother, who is quite interested in local history, somehow had connections with this Andy Downey, and it was his wife who was the granddaughter of the Lewises, who were involved with the first hotel. And after Shirley passed away, he sent this information to my brother, who in turn gave it to me. So he wasn't too sure about it all, but he said that she had done years of research, and this is what she had come up with. So, and those people's names were John Lewis and Harriet Lewis. And apparently some of the relatives are buried in the Northbrook Cemetery. I think at this point, we'll open it up to questions that people have, or verifications about information that's out there about the Kaladar Hotel. So if anybody has a question? Yes?
What year was it first built and when did it close initially?
We don't have a date for the first hotel up on the hill. It was only there apparently a short time when it burned. So we do know that it was moved down the hill in 1934. before my time.
And closed what year?
Moved in 1934.
No, we closed.
Closed, finally. Andy Anderson told me that they closed it in 2009.
No.
The Tricky family, and I believe Mike is here somewhere.
Yeah, right here.
Owned the hotel for over 30 years, is that correct, Mike?
Yes. As I came there when I was 2.5 years old with my parents.
And the Trickies sold it to Andy Anderson and Donna.
Yeah.
And they were there from 1989 to 2009.
Yeah. Operation.
Andy said that they bought it in 1989. So, I don't know.
Oh, Eileen.
That's fine.
Eileen.
Just pause for a second. Carolyn has a message here to read.
I do. You know, the Kaladar Hotel was a lot of fun in this community in so many different ways. And Dithea Webster, Catherine Grant, and I were up in Pembroke last year, and we met a gentleman whose name was Jay McLaren. And he asked us where we were from, and you know, we went through the usual, oh, I'm from Denby, and I'm from Scoutamanna Lake, and we went, and Dithea said she was from Northbrook, and he just clicked, and he said, that's near the Kaladar Hotel. And then he told us a story that'll curl your hair. And he sent it to me. He'd like to be here today, but he couldn't. I first became acquainted with the Kaladar Hotel one cold evening in March, many years ago. A good friend, Claudia, who owned the Richmond nursery near Ottawa, and I were returning from a buying trip to Toronto when we were stopped for speeding on Highway 7, just west of Kaladar. Now, this man was a nursery. He owned a nursery in Pembroke, by the way. So he did a lot of buying and selling of plants. The OPP officer discovered that my license plate had not been renewed from the previous November. My vehicle was impounded, and I was told that I'd have to get my license renewed the next morning before I'd be allowed to drive home. The officer then drove us to the Kaladar Hotel. There we were welcomed by Andy. He had the coffee pot on and proceeded to keep us going with coffee while I called Claudia's husband, who was to meet us in Renfrew, to come and pick her up in Kaladar. She couldn't stay overnight. He eventually showed up, and they left me at the hotel. I had the upstairs room, second from the north. When I inquired of Andy how much the room would be, he said $25. I replied in an astonished tone, "What?" Andy misunderstood my comment, thinking that I found the price too high. And he replied, "Well, that includes breakfast." And in the morning, Andy knocked on my door to get me up. I came down to a full breakfast already prepared. Toast, bacon, eggs, juice, and of course Andy's famous coffee. While I ate, Andy sat at the table with me as he often did, and we chatted the whole time. He pointed to a gentleman across the room and told me that he'd arranged with this man to give me a ride to get the license renewed and to take me to get my car on the highway. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. By now I figured I was in good hands. Andy had a special way of making everybody feel comfortable and at ease. After breakfast, the driver and I headed out to get things straightened out with my car. His fee was to be $10. I gave him $20, and he went straight across the road and put gas in the car. So, when we returned to get my luggage and settle the room charge, Andy wouldn't take anything for the several pots of coffee that we consumed the night before. As I was saying thank you and goodbye, Andy stated, "You know, you're the only man that I've ever met who brought a woman to a hotel and then called her husband to come and get her. Over the following years of many buying trips, I seldom failed to stop at the hotel for a meal, or at least a piece of Andy's famous bumbleberry pie. On these trips, I would often have one of my female staff with me. Each time, Andy would ask, "Is this your wife?" I had several women working with me, so he had to ask each time. Eventually, I did stop with my wife and introduced her to Andy. Andy sat down at our table, looked at my wife in the eye, and said, "Lady, do I have some things to tell you?" The story about the money placed everywhere around the restaurant, the map with the letters and the foreign money, and many other special things that Andy did for folks who dropped in are all a part of the Kaladar Hotel legend. Andy was one of those special human beings who could show empathy to others. I must say at this point that Red and I tried to bring that money map over here from the museum so that we could have it on display today, but it wasn't going to be parted from the wall. So I encourage you to go in this summer and look at that map where people put their currency from all over the world, and then he drew little strings to it. It's just amazing. So be a guest at the museum in the summer, and you'll see some of the Kaladar memorabilia over there. The stories of the money's placed everywhere, and Andy was one of those special human beings who showed empathy to others. It was with regret on a recent drive through Kaladar that I observed that the hotel building had been removed. Even though it had been closed for years, it still provided many fond memories. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to celebrate today, but I send my very best regards. J. McLaren, Pembroke.
Thank you, Carolyn. A nice addition to the history of the hotel. I'm surprised that you and Red had trouble getting that board over here. Margaret and I were the ones that mounted it on the wall last year.
It wasn't getting it here, it was taking it off the wall. We were having problems with it.
Eileen, just on that point, if anyone is interested in going over to see it at the conclusion of the meeting, we can certainly do that.
Okay. It's very interesting. It's huge, I think 4 by 8 sheet of plywood, is that correct?
Yes.
And it's filled with currency that has all these little strings going to wherever, and quite interesting. Any other questions? Yes.
I assume the property belongs to the ministry.
Yes.
Is there what's going to happen there now that that's gone?
Nobody knows.
Lots of stories flying around, but no facts.
I can see a 4-leaf clover there.
Apparently, the story was that they were going to reconfigure that intersection corner, but who knows when. Yes, it's Barrie?
Two things. First off, I'm not sure if Andy was serving food when we were down here first, but I used to have 2 of my family members and their families come, and every year they looked so forward to stopping at the Kaladar Hotel and having breakfast. Now that would be probably about 20 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago. Anyhow, that's one. The second one is I remember about 35, 40 years ago that Shell gas station, they used to have a breweries, didn't they, in the back? A beer store?
Not officially.
It tasted okay.
As you know, I'm the chair of the gathering committee, history gathering committee. Sometimes I meet some very interesting people. I met Ina Newman here, And she's told me some stories. Her grandfather used to own the hotel. So Anna, would you come and tell us a few stories? You will? I'd like to hear a story about the window. Somebody jumping out the window.
Window? Oh.
Your mom, right? You can tell the story. That's okay. These people are all hard of hearing anyway. They're just like me. I got your back.
What I want to know is, every time my dad, when he was in the council or the warden, he'd come home pissed to the ears. And then my mother's stepmother would always get him going when he come home from council. So anyway, she told him some stuff on Mom. And Mom was about 15, 16. She jumped out of the window at the top in the wintertime, and she never broke a leg or broke a bone, but she lived with my grandma from then on. That's what her stepmother did.
That's pretty good.
Yes. And I was telling her.
Tell us about the hotel being moved down the hill.
Well, I only know what my mom told me. I only know what my mom told me because she always said, Dad moved the hotel. That's all I ever knew when I was too small.
And we heard that somebody was in it when it was moved down the hill.
That I did not know. No, I didn't.
How about the case of water?
All of that. Okay. Grandpa had the store there too. And the girl and the church right next to the church. Okay, butter come in them days in 50-pound boxes, wooden boxes. So Grandpa went out to get some butter. It was missing. So a lady that cleaned the church found the case of butter over in the church. They stole it and hid it there. Mom always told me that.
That's a good place to hide it. Nobody goes there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There you go.
Thank you very much, Anne. And just in case, when I said that I would get her to talk, and she said to me, if you do, I'll get you a gift. So she brought Shannon here today, and Sharon gave me this for the museum. That's a donation.
Nice.
It's from 1915. Handy case that goes on your belt, as you can see.
Oh, okay.
And
Full of butter.
It's not the butter. It could cut the butter, but this is the handle, and it's a saw. But it's a chainsaw, and I tried to get it out of there, and it's pretty sharp. So we'll have to do that very carefully. And the other handle is there, so one guy at each end, and we pull, and we cut the butter. Sharon will tell us a little bit more.
Here, you take this and I'll take that.
Never had anybody tell me that before.
Oh, it is a chip.
Oh, that's why I couldn't get it out.
1915?
Wow.
Oh, man.
Can you imagine?
The upside down.
Ice cream?
Sorry.
I've seen people, I've seen it.
And it's very, very sharp.
It's a wood for cutting ice.
Oh, it's for cutting ice.
Oh,
Very interesting. Isn't that something? I think I'll stick to my chainsaw. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for the gift. Okay, thank you. Andy, where's Andy?
Can I just ask, what does that thing have to do with the Kaladar Hotel?
nothing.
Just want to clear it up.
Except that they took ice to Kaladar Hotel, it was cut by that chain. And I was thinking,
The question was asked a few moments ago about who owns the property where the hotel sat most recently. Andy is here now, so maybe he can answer that question for you.
Hi, folks. Sorry I'm late, but some people have to work. Obviously, I didn't make enough money at the Kaladar Hotel, so I still have to work. Anyway, Department of Highways bought the property from me, and we made the deal about 15 years ago, and the deal is not finished yet, but anyway, the hotel's gone, and we're still negotiating. But anyway, the old girl was just exactly what I needed, because I bought it at just about the time that I should have been just about ready to retire, but I wasn't. And I needed something to keep me in the sort of working, but working for myself, and where I had lots of company, and that was exactly what I needed, because I had made many friends, and met thousands of people, and it was, we had a sign up there, maybe some of you remember that you come as customers and you leave as friends.
Yeah.
And that was, and I believe the Trickies that had it immediately before me, they had it for 31 years. 30. 30 years?
Close to 30, yeah.
Sorry about that. Anyway, they had ran the community hotel, and it was really probably one of the last ones that was active in the area, other than Aaronsville, and Aaronsville's still going. But it was just a fine place for me to meet people and to serve people, and you know, I had some really wonderful staff over the years, and Elaine Tricky was, she worked for me for 17 years, and I said, you know, our relationship there lasted a lot longer than a lot of marriages. But yeah, but my wife, Donna, she had the gift shop there, and she met a lot of people there, and one night there was a lady come in, and she looked at some quilts that Donna had for sale, and she said, "How much is that quilt?" And I said, "It's $150. And she said, "Oh, that much?" And I said, "Yeah, and don't try to Jew me down." But the mistake that I made, that she was Jewish. And she, like, I didn't mean anything by it, because it's a saying that we've all said. But anyway, she tore a strip off me, but she ended up buying the quilt. You know, I guess maybe that's what the old girl was noted for, was we didn't want anybody to go away sort of mad or offended, and it worked well. It worked well for us all. And did anybody tell them about the hotel coming down over the hill?
Well, it's been mentioned, if you have more detail, maybe that here.
Well, I don't know. But anyway, they tell me that in 1934, when the hotel was moved down from up on that hill by the railway track, it was up there originally, and apparently that was the second or maybe third hotel that had been built up there, because they kept burning down. But I can understand that, because everybody used coal stoves and wood stoves and whatever. Anyway, it was moved down in 1934, and they told me that it was moved down on rollers, and they had a team of horses and a Model T Ford to hold it back, and they rolled it down the hill, but it took them a week to get it up from the ground up onto the foundation, because they had the foundation, of course, there, and they had to roll it up, or bring it up the rollers, but they said they never closed the hotel. They just lengthened the ladder as it went up. So, you know, it's sad to see it going, but my pocketbook helped, it helped my pocketbook a little bit. And, but anyway, has anybody got any questions? Yes.
Andy, talk a little bit about, we touched on it, talk a little bit about your money wall.
Oh, yes, I must talk about that. You should have brought that over.
Well, we tried.
Yeah, we tried. Anyway, the money, the first morning we opened, there was a lady come in, and she was our real estate agent, really. So anyway, she came in for coffee, and she said, I must give you $1 for good luck. And so anyway, she gave my wife $1 for good luck, and Donna said, well, I must put that up someplace, so she stuck it up in the corner of the door. So the next morning, that afternoon, there was some people come in, and they said, oh, you just opened? Yeah. What's the money there for? And I said, well, that's for good luck. And they said, oh, well, we must add to that. Well, over the years, the first year we only gave away $1,400, and we donated that to the Pine Meadow Nursing Home, because they had had a reorganization, shall we say, Shirley?
Well, they had a fundraising.
Yeah.
Contributed a lot to that.
Yeah. Anyway, so over the years that we were there, we donated over $22,000 to charity. Some of it was given to people that were down and out, needed gas to get to where they were going. Some of it but most of it went to the Pine Meadow. And but $22,000 went to Pine Meadow, and the rest, well, we gave it away to several places. But it was money well spent. And we had a lot of fun out of that, and the map that's over in the museum, we put that together because people come in and they give us money from all over, and from all over the world. Well, it's really you can't get any money for that at the bank. So anyway, we put it up on a map, and it really tells a story about the varied clientele that we had at coming in, because we had people from Madagascar, and you know, I thought that Madagascar and Fiji and when you get that far away, well, you've traveled a long ways. So no, I really feel that it worked out well for the community. We never because when we had it, it really was not a watering hole anymore. It was more a food place or a meeting place. So but it worked out well for us all. And if anybody else got any questions?
Give us a little information, Andy, about the structure itself. How many bedrooms, how many rooms? And there was also obviously the addition put on where the dining room was and the kitchen at the back. And
yeah.
Do you know about that? Or?
Yeah, I know about that. Anyway, yeah, when I came to look at the hotel, it was just a square box set up there, and it really didn't have very much appeal, really. So anyway, I
and it was black and white. And I didn't think that was really a good color for a business. So anyway, the first thing I'd done when we bought it, we put a veranda on there, and it was open. It was an open veranda at that time, and then in '91, booze wasn't moving very good out of the base down in the beverage room. So I decided I would close the beverage room, but I had to have more seating, so I closed in the veranda, and we had seating out there for the summer. But mind you, we only needed extra seating in the summer. But anyway, then on the north end, we had a small, it was a gift shop, a Christmas shop in there, and it was great. We had a lot of fun with it. My wife, she really enjoyed Christmas, and we had, we never made a lot of money with it, but we met a lot of people. And now that place had, it only had 7 bedrooms.
How many? 7
bedrooms. And so we used 2 of the rooms upstairs. We left us, we left 5 bedrooms. And one of them was pretty small. I think it was only about 7.5 by 11.
You're not very tall guy.
It was for just skinny people. But anyway, but you know, it worked out well because it probably seemed bigger than that because the gyprock on the wall was only 1/4 inch.
You've heard many good stories.
It really wouldn't meet the present fire code. But anyway, it was an interesting place. Now down below, I never did, after I closed the beverage room, I really never did capitalize on the downstairs until we started playing euchre down there in the wintertime. So we played euchre down in the basement downstairs, and that was a lot of fun for the community. And so it was, I think it's going to be missed. Any more questions? Yes?
Andy, how many times would you be full with your 5-room?
Oh, never. Never. No. Well, I shouldn't say that. No, we 2 or 3 times, because there was a group of people, they had tents and so on down at Raccoon Lake. And there was 4 or 5 tents there, and when it got wet on the weekends, they used to come up and take all our rooms. But that was.
But you didn't have. Like I used to be in the hotel with.
Normally what would happen, we would rent 2 or 3 rooms a week probably, and most of the people that we had was people that had problems on the road, or we rented quite a few rooms to guys that had been picked up for impaired driving and so on. So the police brought them up to us, and that was a normal occurrence. And sometimes we had groups of people coming through, cycling for charity or walking for charity or so on, and we always donated their rooms to them and fed them breakfast and said goodbye and whatever. But you know, I think that's what life is all about. Yes?
Andy, how did you hear about the hotel? What brought you to buy the hotel? Had you seen it before? Or?
I had seen it back in 1953. I was in the armed forces, and I was running driver training courses out at Kingston, and I used to come up this way, and I would jump off the convoy at the hotel, and go in and have a barley sandwich, and I would send the boys up here, and they used to have their lunch up here, their boxed lunch up here. And then on the way back, they'd pick me up and we'd go back to Kingston. So that worked out very well. But anyway, that was in 1953. But then in 1989, we were at Madoc for a funeral for an uncle of Donna's. And so I picked up a paper because I always have to have something to read while I'm waiting to get served in the restaurant. Sure enough, I see where the Kaladar Hotel is for sale. So I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? That old place is still there, you know, because there are not very many hotels operating there. So anyway, I went home, and so on Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, I phoned, and it was Glenna Hall. She was the real estate agent. And she said, oh yeah, she said, it's still going. She said, are you interested? And I said, well, I could be, you know. But anyway, we talked, and she said, well, come on up and have a look. So anyway, we came up and had a look, and my wife said, no, we're not going to have that. She said, that thing is going to fall down around your ears. So anyway, I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, no, well, you know, the price is kind of right. It was just about the price. It was at the price then that a vacant lot was worth in Oshawa, where I lived. And I thought, well, you know, if the people that own it now have been there for 30 years and lived, well, there must be a living to be made there. And I didn't really need to make a lot of money, but I wanted to have something to do. And that's exactly what happened. We had you know, it was great times, great times. Anything else? Anybody else? Well, thank you very much, folks.
Just before I turn the microphone over to John, when Mrs. Newman was speaking earlier, she mentioned her grandfather, I believe, Mr. Flake. Some of you may have heard that name in the history book that was written by Charlie Armstrong from Flevena, way back in Clarendon and Miller. There's a mention of a Mr. Flake being connected with the first telephones in the area. So he has a connection with more than one thing in the area, and we'll have to research that a little further. I'll turn the mic over now to John. He has some additional information here.
Thank you. Some of the owners that were at the Kaladar Hotel back in the early 30s, Walt Villeneuve and his wife, and he was connected some way or another to the Salmons, was he not?
Babe Tibble's uncle.
Babe Tibble's uncle, okay. And anyway, after he, Glenn Brightson and his father, and Glenn Brightson played hockey for the Chicago Blackhawks back just before the war. And from then on, it was Nipper Murphy and Cliff Murphy, two brothers, and their wives owned it. And from there it went to Alec Morris, and then Bill Brown, and then Mel Trickey and Leo Fortin. And Leo moved on, and Mel and Beulah, they operated, as we said, for 30 years. And then we come to Andy and Donna. And that was the last owners that we know of. Now, some of the people who worked there, of course, Marita Parks worked there 85 years ago. Eileen Trickey, she was there for 17 years. Tina Tomlinson, I'm not sure how long, but she was cook for many, many years. And Elmer Neal, he was the bartender for quite a few years.
But I was too.
Oh, you were too, Mike. Okay. I think you served me. But anyway, that's the rundown of the people that worked there and owned it over the years. Of course, the earlier ones, Bill Brown, Alec Morris, we don't know who worked for them. But anyway, that's what we have here. And I'll turn it back to the better looking one.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, just to clarify that the Mr. and Mrs. Villeneuve, their connection with Salmons, and we have some Salmon family here today, but he worked at Salmons, I believe, for many years. Is that correct? Cheryl, you know? Yeah, I remember him working up at Salmons for quite a few years, and his niece just lived down the road from me, so she filled me in a little bit. Unfortunately, she passed away before we could get all the information, so anyway, is there any other questions?
Can I
Yes?
say something?
Oh, yeah.
That, this is where I met Terry Fox.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, when he went through Kaladar.
Terry came into on his journey across Canada.
On his
On
run.
his run.
He ran down this,
Stopped in and there.
and he came by.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had something.
Because we were in a car and saw him running. We were about 10 and 12, something like that. And Terry Fox waved at us. And we had a picture of Terry Fox and the Kaladar Hotel. Wow, I don't know where it is now.
There was another hand went up over here somewhere.
So obviously everybody here knows about the Kaladar Hotel. I'm guessing that a fair number of you have heard the name Alice Munro, who is a very famous Canadian author and who, as a matter of fact, won the Nobel Prize for Literature. You may not know that one of her stories features the Kaladar Hotel. I looked for it this morning and I don't have the book, but I am determined to find it. Now, being an Alice Munro story, it sort of features a vulnerable young woman and a slightly older man and doing a tour, but they end up at the Kaladar Hotel. So, and seeing as how she is, a Nobel laureate for literature, it's safe to say that the Kaladar Hotel is world famous.
Does she call it the Kaladar? You know that I'm going to find it out.
Yes.
My favorite coffee mug, Eddie.
I
broke the law last fall. It's not the first time, but we won't go there. We went into the ladies and escorts room with a lady by my side. But I had a high-powered lantern in my car, and I decided to do a self-guided tour of your place, Andy. This was a week before the fence went up around it, so it was a very interesting tour. It had all 7 rooms upstairs, and you left a lot of stuff in there. I see why you didn't make any money. I wanted to be the last customer of the Kaladar Hotel. There was cases of beer down there. I snapped one. I think it was a stubby. It was a little off, so I didn't go there. But the only souvenir I took was this Kaladar Hotel coffee mug.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you remember these or not, but I thought at first it was Depression days because it 1 ounce of rum, maybe?
Yeah.
1 ounce, but it's a 613 phone number on here, so it couldn't have been Depression days.
No.
But one of my regrets in life, my wedding night, 1970, first one anyway, stayed at the Kaladar Motel instead of the Kaladar Hotel. Mistake, because it's very cheap. So it might have been more successful if I'd stayed at your place. No, but anyway. So thanks for the self-guided tour, for allowing me not having me arrested, and it was in rough shape. It was in rough shape.
Any other questions or comments? I'm sure that there are stories that over the years will be circulated from time to time when the name Kaladar Hotel is mentioned. There'll be probably all kinds of stories. There probably are all kinds of pictures out there that were taken outside and inside and connected with the Kaladar Hotel. But certainly the tearing down of the hotel on the 5th of March of this year is certainly not the end of it. I'm sure that the memories will last for many, many years. I never was in the hotel until Andy and Donna were there and then stopped for lunch one day. I never was in the beverage room down below. The roof would probably have fallen in had I walked in there. But it certainly was a place of great interest, and the history of it will last for a long, long time. So with that, we'll leave you with your memories.
You're not going to let them do it themselves? That's what we usually put it here.
I have a question in general to ask of anybody who was involved